about this house from now on. Kristen and her family will be living here. So, could you possibly move somewhere else? What? I was taken aback by this sudden statement, unable to comprehend what was happening, and all I could do was listen in bewilderment to my mother-in-law's words. Are you listening? And here, take this. What is this? My husband handed me a folded piece of paper. The moment I unfolded the paper, it was clear it was a divorce application. I could not grasp the intentions of my mother-in-law or my husband at all. You'll understand once you open it. It's the divorce paper. My husband said that while laughing and observing my reaction. This house was acquired with the savings I had accumulated. It would have been impossible to purchase it with my husband's part-time job income. Despite fulfilling the wish of my mother-in-law and husband to convert it into a duplex, this was the predicament I found myself in. Why must I be put in such a difficult situation? Okay. I get it. So it's fine if I just leave, right? When I said this, the two of them were overjoyed. Now, finally, we can get rid of the noisy one and have some peace. I never thought she would leave so easily. Their end will undoubtedly be miserable. I wanted them to see. I will make sure they regret this, just them. 3 years ago, I was working at the same trading company as my husband, Steve, and we got married afterward. I quit my job after getting married, but there was a special reason for that. While working, I was also drawing illustrations as a hobby and sharing them on social media. At one point, my illustrations suddenly became popular on social media, leading to frequent orders, and now my monthly income can reach up to $10,000. I finally started earning more. Really? That's wonderful. I hope you can continue to earn a stable income from this. That's how Steve supported my illustration work at home, and our married life was going smoothly. After 5 years of marriage, when we started thinking about buying a house, my husband lost his job. The cause was staff reductions at his workplace due to economic downturns. I've worked so hard for the company, and to be treated like this. I'm sorry. I couldn't find the words to encourage my husband, who apologized with tears. I could only support him silently until he regained his composure. A month later, my husband started a part-time job at a nearby store at night, but his income significantly decreased to about $700 a month. I felt the need to work even harder. After that, I managed to work more and significantly increased our savings. With that, we could finally consider buying our own home. Another year passed, and after discussing with my husband, I made up my mind about purchasing a home. Hey, isn't it time to buy a house? But my income is low. Don't worry, I'm here and we have some savings, so it's all good. With my strong suggestion, my hesitant husband made a request. It might be strange to ask this, but could we make the house a duplex so my mom can live with us? My dad has passed away, and above all, our family home is quite old. My mom also mentioned she would prefer a duplex if we were building a new house. My father-in-law passed away from a heart attack when my husband was young. I had received support from my mother-in-law, and I understood how much my husband cared for her. Okay, it's decided. We'll respect your mother's wishes and your request, and make our home a duplex. So, we went to the housemaker with my mother-in-law and signed the contract for our ideal home. In terms of the interior, we greatly considered the opinions of my husband and mother-in-law. Ideally, I would have preferred to customize it more to my liking, but I was happy as long as they were pleased. However, I never dreamed I would be betrayed in such an unexpected way. About 10 months after the house contract, our home was finally completed. We also set up an office workspace, and its comfort has greatly contributed to my creative activities. Wendy, thank you so much for building such a beautiful home. You're welcome. I'm always grateful for your support. My mother-in-law really loves the house and never stops expressing her gratitude to me. Seeing her so happy made me truly joyful. Life in the new house started smoothly, but after 3 months, I noticed a change in my mother-in-law's behavior towards me. Hey, could you tidy up my room a bit? I'm a bit busy with work right now. Busy or not, you're always holed up in your room, aren't you? Steve mentioned that you're not working hard enough. Not working hard enough. What has my husband seen to say such a thing? This house was built with my earnings, yet I wanted to argue with my mother-in-law, but since it was unclear whether Steve actually said that, I ended up silently complying with her request and started cleaning the room. While I was cleaning, my mother-in-law relaxed and did nothing. After about an hour of cleaning and getting things in order, I spoke to my mother-in-law. So, you're finally done. I'll be asking you to do this regularly from now on, you know. Yes. I was so astounded that I was at a loss for words. Why do I have to do things like I'm her servant? While my mother-in-law's words were infuriating, my anger towards my husband also grew. I decided to confront him about this at dinner. By the way, I heard from your mother that you've been complaining about my work ethic? Well, just a bit. When I see my sister working hard at the factory, I feel like there's a lack of fairness compared to you staying at home. Steve has an older sister named Kristen, who is 2 years older than him. She has a 3-year-old child and gets along well with her husband and even keeps in touch with me occasionally. Still, I was shocked to hear that Steve actually felt that way. I thought he was on my side, but hearing this truth left me stunned. After that, my mother-in-law's treatment of me became even stricter. It started with just cleaning, but gradually escalated to demands like give me a massage and make me some coffee, treating me like a servant. Steve still showed no intention of looking for a full-time job. Hey, aren't you going to look for a full-time job soon? Stop nagging. You're earning well enough, so that should be sufficient. With a husband who wouldn't listen and a mother-in-law who treated me like a laborer, I was on the verge of breaking down. Kristen, I can't take it anymore. Help me. Are you okay? After 3 months of enduring this, I sought help from Kristen, who immediately intervened and apparently spoke sternly to Steve and my mother-in-law. Thanks to Kristen, the harassment stopped temporarily for about 2 weeks. Then one evening after dinner, while I was washing the dishes, Steve said he wanted to talk. What do you want to talk about? Just wait. I'll call Mom, so sit here. Wondering what I was about to hear, I waited anxiously on the living room sofa for my mother-in-law and husband. Sorry to keep you waiting. Steve said you had something to talk about. As I said that, my mother-in-law and husband exchanged glances and smirked. Taking her time, my mother-in-law started speaking. About this house, from now on, Kristen and her family will be living here. So, could you possibly move somewhere else? What? I was taken aback by this sudden statement, unable to comprehend what was happening, and all I could do was listen in bewilderment to my mother-in-law's words. Are you listening? And here, take this. What is this? My husband handed me a folded piece of paper. The moment I unfolded the paper, it was clear it was a divorce application. I could not grasp the intentions of my mother-in-law or my husband at all. You'll understand once you open it. It's the divorce papers. My husband said that while laughing, observing my reaction. This house was acquired with the savings I had accumulated. It would have been impossible to purchase it with my husband's part-time job income. Despite fulfilling the wish of my mother-in-law and husband to convert it into a duplex, this is the predicament I find myself in. Why must I be put in such a difficult situation? What's been going on with both of you for the past few months? I appreciate that you provided this house for us, but your income surpasses that of Steve, putting him in a difficult position. We don't need someone who can't respect her husband in this house. That's why we've decided that Kristen will live here instead. That's right. I'm honestly jealous that you were doing well by yourself. I didn't quit my job on my own, and yet I've been pressured to keep looking for work. I'm fed up. So that's the reason. Their harsh treatment towards me was based on such a background. I'm just astonished by their childish reasoning. This house was purchased with my earnings. I really wanted to say, you two should be the ones to leave, but I no longer had the energy to respond. Okay. I get it. So it's fine if I just leave, right? Yeah, that's right. Now, finally, we can get rid of the noisy one and have some peace. When I declared I would leave, they could hardly hide their joy. Well, if that's what they want, I'll respond in kind. Just watch. I'll make sure they regret this. From that moment, I vowed to get back at them. The next day, I packed the bare minimum and left the house. My mother-in-law and Steve were there to see me off, but there was not a trace of sadness. Make sure you submit the divorce papers. Thinking that I won't have to see you anymore brightens my mood. We'll take good care of this house, so don't worry. They were spouting whatever they pleased. Don't worry, I won't let you have your way from now on. After leaving the house, I immediately contacted Kristen. Hello, Kristen? Oh, what's up? Actually, I told her about being asked to leave the house by my mother-in-law and Steve, and that Kristen was supposedly going to live in the house after me. What? What's happening? Can we meet somewhere to talk? This information was completely new to Kristen. To discuss the details, I headed to a nearby cafe she suggested. About 5 minutes after I arrived at the cafe, Kristen also arrived. Sorry for the sudden request. No, it's fine. I have nowhere else to go now anyway. As I said that with a hint of self-mockery, Kristen's expression sharpened. About that matter, I haven't heard anything from Mom or Steve. In fact, I didn't know about it. My husband and I are actually planning to build a house elsewhere. Did you really not know about this? I really had no idea. I was surprised by this as well. This meant that Steve and my mother-in-law lied about Kristen moving in to kick me out of the house. Knowing that, I realize I don't need to cling to that house anymore. I'm relieved to hear that. Actually, I was considering selling the house, even if you were really going to live there. I've made up my mind now. I don't want those two to be happy at all. Indeed, they went too far. What you want to do is up to you, Wendy. I can't overlook what happened this time. I felt relieved after talking to Kristen. I'm so glad I could talk to you, Kristen. Thank you. After leaving the cafe, I went straight to the city hall to submit the divorce papers. Then, I visited a real estate agent to discuss selling the house and land, handing over the property register. Those two must be living peacefully, unaware of anything. Every time I think of them, anger wells up inside me. The real estate agent mentioned that the property is well located and relatively new, so a buyer should be found quickly. Please contact me once it's sold. I'll be at my parents' home for a while. I left everything to the real estate agent and returned to my parents' house. An hour later, I arrived home and my parents welcomed me back, though surprised by my sudden return. 2 weeks later, I received a call that a potential buyer was interested in the house. They wanted to see the house immediately and planned to visit the next weekend. Would it be okay if I joined the visit? As a former resident, I can provide detailed guidance about the house. The real estate agency contacted the potential buyers, who were pleased and requested my presence. Now, your happy times won't last long. Just imagining their shocked faces makes me smile. Then came the day of the visit. As the real estate agent opened the front door, my ex-husband, Steve, appeared, flustered. What the hell? Who are you? I'll call the police. Startled by Steve's loud voice, the real estate agent hesitated, but I spoke up from behind. Don't worry about him. He has no right to say such things. Wendy, what's going on? Ignoring Steve's reaction, I led the potential buyers and the agent inside the house. Here is the living room. As I continued the tour, Steve raised his voice again, trying to interfere. Wait a minute. What's going on? I'm asking you. My mother-in-law also showed up, adding to the commotion. What a hassle. What is the meaning of this? I'll call the police. The police. Go ahead, call them. Anyway, this house is no longer yours. I'm truly sorry to the visitors. I need to talk with these two, so please wait outside. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Leaving those words, I took Steve and my mother-in-law outside to explain the situation. Steve was red-faced with anger. What's this visit about? Why are you showing our house to others? I can't believe it. How dare you come here unannounced? They seemed not to grasp the full situation. Time to make things clear. Your house. Ridiculous. I bought this house. Only my name is on the registry. And I've confirmed with your sister, Kristen. The story about her family moving in was a complete lie. That Things changed suddenly. Such things happen. Do you really think that excuse will work? I've directly confirmed with Kristen, and she knew nothing about what you two were discussing. Confronted with the truth, they were left speechless, biting their lips. Furthermore, let me explain who the visitors today are. I put this house on the market. Therefore, neither I nor you own it now. The real estate agency, though. Today, people interested in buying this house came to visit. Do you understand now? So arbitrarily. What are we supposed to do now? That has nothing to do with me. If you don't leave now, you might be reported for trespassing. As I stated this calmly, Steve and my former mother-in-law began to apologize, their faces on the verge of tears. Don't be so cold. Don't abandon us. You know about my income. I can't make a living like this. Forget about the divorce. Let's start over. That's what we should do. In response to their desperate proposal, I couldn't contain my anger and ended up slapping Steve on the cheek with all my might. Stop with your childish excuses. Who was it that suggested the divorce? It was you, wasn't it? Your income is low because you've never seriously looked for a job. And mother, you've coddled your son and tried to drive me out of the house, but now you want to take advantage of me? Let me be clear. I have no intention of taking care of you or forgiving you. Now, either pack your bags and leave, or I'll call the police. Make your choice. With all my anger, I confronted them with the truth. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Fearful, they quickly returned inside. Within 20 minutes, they had their belongings and left the house, hurrying away. What a troublesome pair they were. Thinking they could act selfishly and rely on me for a comfortable life was a huge miscalculation. They'll have to get by on their own from now on. I apologize for the disturbance. The issue has been resolved. You don't have to worry about those two showing up here again. After seeing them off, I apologized to the potential buyers and the real estate agent and resumed the house door. 2 weeks later, I received the news that the sale of the house was finalized. I could finally move on from the bitter memories associated with that place. Taking a deep breath, I regained my composure. Then, I received a call from Kristen. Hello. It's been a while. How have you been? It's been quite some time. Actually, I managed to sell the house. That's great news. After a pleasant chat with Kristen, I found myself wondering about Steve and his mother. By the way, how are those two doing now? Well, from what I've heard, they're living together in a rundown, low-value apartment. Steve is still working part-time at the store and is struggling to find a full-time job due to his age, making it hard to secure stable employment. As a result, they're having a tough time financially, and Mom has started working part-time at a supermarket to help make ends meet. Looking back, Wendy, deciding to divorce might have been the best choice for you. Receiving this detailed update from Kristen, I felt reassured that my decision was the right one. If I had continued living with them, the mental and financial burdens I would have faced would have been much greater than now. Maybe you're right. I'd like to keep in touch with you, Kristen, if that's okay? Really? I'm delighted. Please keep in touch. Let's go out for lunch with my child sometime. With that, the call ended. In the end, that decision was the most rational choice for my future, reaffirming my belief that living independently and doing what I love suits me best. For now, I'm fine without marriage or romance. I've never been in a place like this before. It's like a dream come true to live in a place like this. Carrie's light voice spread to every corner of the house. Sam, my brother, took to that voice and said, kind of teasingly, Emma, are you still here? Can you leave a little bit early? Sam chuckled, and Carrie leaned into Sam's arms sweetly. She smiled a little nastily at me and lightly poked Sam's forehead with her finger. Oh my God, don't say that. Emma is single. You have to be a little more careful. When I looked at them after they came to my parents' house, I felt that they were really only thinking about themselves. What were they thinking, these two? My parents would only give me a little warning. That might not be a good idea. However, they never seem to think about me. Sam and Carrie are happily whispering to each other as I make a move to pack my bags. They don't seem to care at all about the condition of this house or my feelings about it. It might be too late for regrets. My name is Emma. I am a 24-year-old single woman, and my days were always bustling with my slightly troublesome younger brother Sam and his wife Carrie. Sam has been a bit of a prankster since childhood. He used to annoy his friends a lot. He even chased insects in vain. His mischievousness was well known. He and I were a bit on different wavelengths, and I never made an effort to understand his personality. Carrie, who married Sam, also seems somewhat flippant. If she had been mature and sensible, she would not have been so blatantly surprised by me when we first met. Carrie is 24 years old, like me, and seems to be living happily with Sam now. She sometimes pokes a little fun at me, and I think she has become a little arrogant since she got married. Our parents have always spoiled Sam. Sam was sociable, had many friends, and was well received by his school teachers. I wasn't good at sports, but I was at the top of my class when it came to academics. Despite this, I never received much recognition from my parents or Sam. Even now, their attitude feels much the same. Sam's school years were marked by problematic behaviors. I think part of the reason for this can be attributed to our parents for not guiding him properly. In fact, Sam had touched or broken other people's belongings, leading to several apologies and compensation discussions with our parents. But out of compassion for Sam, our parents let his mistakes slide and didn't apologize to the affected parties. This led to escalating problems, and they even faced hefty bills a few times. Each time, our parents chose to pay in installments, and it seemed they were still repaying the debts over a long period. Such was Sam, but he was allowed to go to college. However, his job after graduation didn't work out, and he ended up working part-time. He has been dependent on our parents for money to go out and play. Our parents have also been very rough with money, and it seems that they have had to put up with a lot in order to give Sam an allowance. Then one day, a surprise came to me. Sam's girlfriend, Carrie, was going to live with Sam in our parents' house. Carrie said she wanted to support my parents in their old age, but honestly, I'm a little skeptical. Based on past experiences, I don't think she was being 100% sincere in saying that. In fact, she might be assuming that living with our parents would be easier financially. Sam does not have a full-time job. Maybe she thinks she wouldn't have to worry about rent and might even get an allowance once in a while. Besides, it sounded like our parents were thinking of their future grandchildren and were on board with Carrie's proposal. That would have made them happy, but their attitude toward me was a little different. My mother, in particular, told me to get out of the house, and my father started to avoid me. Even Sam and Carrie were a little distant from me. I was really sad to see their attitudes. I have been supporting my family's finances all these years, but when I look at them, it is as if they have forgotten about my efforts. My heart ached to see their indifferent faces. It made me want to argue with them a little. But I kept those feelings in my chest calmly and slowly started to pack up my belongings in my room. If I were to say, I'm leaving home, there might be a lot of opposition. But as long as everyone told me to leave the house, I would respect their wishes. My younger brother and his wife, behaving like children, came to the family home, and our parents indulged them. I have been putting money aside for a long time to repay the amount I spent on my family. My parents did not pay my college tuition due to financial reasons and out of spite. However, with some ingenuity and saving, I was able to pay back my college tuition in a little over 2 years. After I got a job, I worked a small part-time job after work and put the money I earned from that into the family budget. That effort finally ended with the last payment. However, my parents seemed to think that I would keep sending them money for years to come, and they used it comfortably. I asked them gently, "Are you sure about this?" Then my mother raised her voice and said, "Are you making fun of us?" I became a little sad and decided to leave home. With one last look at Carrie, Sam, and my parents' faces, I began to move on to a new life. A month passed and I started living in a new place with my longtime boyfriend, James. He is always kind and cares about me more than his family. With him, my new life would be wonderful. One day, I received a call from an unknown number. I had blocked calls from my family, but for some reason I was curious and answered the phone. Then I heard my mother's voice. "Why aren't you sending money to the family?" That was the content of the call. I was a little surprised that my relationship with them had not yet been severed, but I couldn't help but be curious and I ended up knowing more about their lives. Since Emma is working so hard to support us with $3,000, maybe James and Carrie can come up with $4,000? Our parents seemed a little hopeful. They probably believed that my brother and sister-in-law's promise of future support would help make things easier. But when Sam heard these expectations, he immediately shook his head and said, "I can't do it." My father, who had expected a total of $7,000 each month with $3,000 from me and $4,000 from the younger couple, was left in shock by Sam's response. My father, in particular, seemed to be thinking of retiring soon from the stress of his job, and he was probably counting on this income. Sam, on the other hand, was optimistic that living together would increase his allowance. In fact, he was quite surprised when he found out that he still had some outstanding alimony from his past. I had never considered sending $7,000 to my parents each month, so Sam called me to discuss the matter. James, who was helping me, looked concerned next to me and suggested we talk about it. But I knew I had to do this, so I took a deep breath, regained my composure, and continued. "I know it's a lot of work to pay for the family loans, but I hope you and your family can get through it together." At these words, the atmosphere of the place suddenly changed. In fact, I had paid for all of our family's finances. But my parents seemed to have completely forgotten that fact. "Huh? You're paying your mortgage, right? Do you have a good grasp of your own home's situation?" If I'd known this, I wouldn't have gotten married. Carrie couldn't help but let her true feelings slip. Then all hell broke loose in the house. There were loud crosstalks of fighting. In the midst of all this, I reported one last little surprise and hung up the phone. "Oh, by the way, I'm getting married to James. From now on, I want to enjoy my new life. So please don't contact me anymore." I don't know what happened to my parents or Sam after that, but James and I are enjoying our new life together. I am planning to have a small wedding next year and intend to invite only those who really care about us. From now on, I will no longer be involved with them. I am free to stretch my wings and start anew. While visiting my in-laws who live far away, my mother-in-law came to pick us up at the station in her car. My husband Phil got into the passenger seat first, and as I tried to open the backseat door, I realized it was locked. Mother, the door seems to be locked." As I said that to them through the car window, my mother-in-law and Phil looked at each other and started laughing. With a smile, my mother-in-law said, "Why should I let an incompetent woman who can't even do proper wife duties into the car?" What do you mean? I never liked you from the start. You wear your career woman attitude on your face and don't support Phil at all. "Hey, open the door," I demanded, but the door remained firmly locked. Then Phil in the passenger seat said mockingly, "This should make you rethink things a little. Walk 3 hours back home." At that moment, I couldn't take it anymore. What kind of parent-child pair is this? "I won't follow you anymore. I don't care what happens." "Fine," I replied, squeezing out my words. My mother-in-law and Phil laughed loudly, rolled up the windows, and drove off. An hour later, Phil called me repeatedly. "I'm Katie Simpson, 31 years old, and a working wife. I'm good at Spanish and work for a foreign company. My workplace is vibrant, and I spent my 20s devoted to my job. But soon I realized my 30s were approaching and felt a bit anxious about not having a boyfriend. Even so, I was hesitant to apply to a marriage agency. Instead, my daily routine was to visit my favorite bar after work to relax and think things over. One day, the bar owner approached me. "What's wrong, Katie? You don't seem well. Maybe it's time I start thinking about marriage, but I can't find a partner. I see. I know it's strange to suggest this to a customer, but how about me? He proposed. What? This bar owner was Phil, who later became my husband. He was 5 years older than me and in his second year of running the bar. At first, we were just owner and customer. But after a few dates, I was drawn to Phil's charm. Since he listened to my work stories, I felt he understood my career and was reassured. Even during busy times, Phil always cared for me. A year into our relationship, he proposed to me, and I happily accepted. After that, my parents approved of the marriage, and we visited Phil's family. His family lives in the suburbs, a 3-hour walk from the nearest station. We headed to his parents' apartment in a rented car. Phil's father had already passed away, and his mother lived alone in the apartment. Suppressing my nerves, I greeted his mother, Diane, respectfully. Nice to meet you. I'm Katie Simpson. I'm dating Phil, I said. But she stared at me and told Phil, Phil, are you really marrying her? I thought you'd bring home someone cuter. She looks like she's got a cheeky face, she pointed out. I was shocked by her words. And if you become his wife, can you help Phil with his work? He's always busy. You're quitting your job, right? She questioned. I hurriedly explained that I intended to continue working at my foreign company and had no plans to quit. You think you can be a wife like that? I don't care if you work for a foreign company, but you're just cheeky. Phil, don't marry this woman, she criticized. I looked at Phil for help, but he said, Hey, Mom. Katie's salary is high. It's fine if she keeps working, right? Good income, huh? Well, if that's the case, I guess it can't be helped. Phil's words seemed to soften his mother, but I was still hurting. Even if you get married, don't slack off at work, she warned, and I felt troubled by her advice. Though she approved of our marriage, her words made me anxious. But with our home and her place being 4 hours apart, believing we'd have little contact with his strict mother, I decided to marry Phil. Afterward, we rented a 3-room apartment near Phil's bar and began our newlywed life. However, Phil didn't help with any housework. He would come home after I had fallen into a deep sleep and sleep until noon. Even if I asked him to do some housework before leaving for work, he didn't help at all. Phil, you didn't do any chores again today. You used to live alone, so you should be able to handle basic housework. Shut up. Now that we're married, housework is the wife's job, right? Mom said the same thing. Don't neglect your wife duties. But you know how busy my job is, right? You think working for a foreign company makes you look cool? You can't control me just because you have a better job and education. Phil's words seemed to reveal his frustration about my higher educational background and career status. Where did the man who understood my career before marriage disappear to? With my head in my hands, I had no choice but to shoulder all the housework. A few months after our marriage, I came home to a shocking sight. My mother-in-law had shown up and announced, Mother, is something wrong? What? Didn't Phil tell you? I'll be staying here for the next 3 months to assess how well you do as a wife. What? Phil, what is this about? I looked at Phil, but he casually replied, did I forgot to mention it? And so, living with my mother-in-law began, starting a painful chapter in my life. Every morning, only I would be woken up early to do housework under her watchful eye. Fish for dinner? Are you treating me like an old lady? Even when I prepared dinner, she would criticize it daily. Sometimes, she would even throw away the food I'd put so much effort into making. After working late, I'd return home to find my mother-in-law blocking the entrance. What are you trying to prove by coming home this late? Don't forget my son is the one making the money. Because of this, I had to listen to her constant nagging. While she treated me like a servant, she often asked me for money. Katie, I want to see a musical show. Could you give me the ticket money? That's quite a sudden request. Come on, I'm in the big city, so you should let me have a little fun. Why are you being so stingy? At times like this, Phil would chime in, Come on, it's not a big deal. Just give her some money. At my wit's end, I argued back, There's no way I can give you that kind of money. This is too much. It seemed this was the first time she'd been opposed, and though she tried to say something back, I ignored her and locked myself in my room. In the end, Phil reluctantly gave her the money. She took it and left without hesitation. As time passed, the amount of money she asked for kept increasing. Naturally, we're covering all the household expenses. She'd ask for money when it suited her, was always sarcastic, and made a mess of the house. Unable to tolerate the situation any longer, I brought it up with Phil one day. Phil, the way your mom treats me is just too much. You need to take action as my husband. But Phil, visibly angry, said, What are you talking about? Are you planning to criticize my mom? No, that's not what I. You think you're superior to me and mom just because you earn more, don't you? I can see right through you. What are you even saying? I don't understand. While I was confused, Phil calmly said, Mom isn't wrong about anything. You're a bad wife, so she's training you. If you continue to criticize her, I'll take measures. What do you mean by measures? At that moment, Phil took out a divorce form, already filled out, and slammed it on the table. Phil, what's this? If you don't comply, I'll divorce you. A woman as inappealing as you will be left alone once you're not with me. And who's the one nobody wants around? You're ridiculous. When I counted, Phil was lost for words and left the room with a snort. I no longer felt any love for Phil. I couldn't forgive his behavior, but simple revenge wouldn't mean much. So I decided to wait for the right opportunity. After the promised 3 months, his mother finally left. Still, my relationship with Phil remained strained. He continued to refuse to help with the housework and only spoke to me harshly. I gradually grew to dislike speaking to Phil altogether. Time passed, and as the Christmas approached, Phil decided on his own, we're going to my parents' place for Christmas this year. Since we were married, I had no choice but to comply, so I reluctantly agreed. On the day of the trip, we took the train. While visiting the in-laws who live far away, my mother-in-law came to pick us up at the station in her car. Phil got into the passenger seat first, and as I tried to open the backseat door, I realized it was locked. Mother, the door seems to be locked. As I said that to them through the car window, my mother-in-law and Phil looked at each other and started laughing. Why should I let an incompetent woman who can't even do proper wife duties into the car? What? What do you mean? I never liked you from the start. You wear your career woman attitude on your face and don't support Phil at all. Hey, open the door, I demanded, but the door remained firmly locked. Then Phil in the passenger seat said mockingly, this should make you rethink things a little. Walk 3 hours back home. At that moment, I couldn't take it anymore. What kind of parent-child pair is this? I won't follow you anymore. I don't care what happens. Fine, I replied, squeezing out my words. My mother-in-law and Phil laughed loudly, rolled up the windows, and drove off. I just silently watched their car drive away. Well then, let's head back, I murmured to myself. And I returned to the station instead of going back to her place. I'd never go back there again. No matter how angry my mother-in-law and Phil would get, I didn't care anymore. I managed to find an open seat on the train and quickly left the area. An hour had passed since I had separated from my husband. Then, my phone started ringing. The caller was Phil. I ignored it and put my phone in my coat pocket. The calls kept coming, almost like a relentless pursuit. Unable to bear it any longer, I stepped out onto the train deck and answered the call. Hello, I said. You finally picked up. Where are you? Phil asked in a panicked voice. Keeping my composure, I asked, what's with all the calls? What's going on? So, after that, we decided to go for a drive and head back home, and I took Mom to a tourist spot. On the way, we had an accident, he replied. An accident? What do you mean? We both got minor injuries. But the other party is a foreigner, really angry, and we can't communicate. You're good at Spanish, so could you come to mediate? Phil asked frantically. I see. Are you really listening? The other car looks very expensive, and the driver is yelling in Spanish. Hurry up and come here. Where are you walking right now? Phil said. I'm not walking, I replied. What? Actually, I'm on the train right now. We're about to enter a tunnel, so the signal might cut off. What the hell? Are you kidding me? Are you heading back home? Phil shouted, but I hung up immediately. Even though the tunnel was a lie, I smiled coolly. After returning home and packing my belongings, I quickly moved into a short-stay rental apartment. Once that was done, I headed to a certain place. After the Christmas holiday ended and the first working day of the year arrived, I left the office to find my mother-in-law with crutches and Phil with a neck brace, waiting for me. What are you two doing? I asked with a scowl, and both turned red in the face. There's no one at home, and you're not answering your phone. What on earth have you been doing? Unforgivable, they yelled, so to avoid causing a scene, I led them to a nearby cafe. Why did you not come last time? And you call yourself a wife? My mother-in-law began to shout, but I ordered coffee and chose to ignore her. Phil couldn't hide his anger and said, because you didn't come back. We had all sorts of trouble afterward. The police came, and in the end, we had to speak directly to the other party. They're foreigners, and not being able to communicate was a problem. Really? I replied. I'll overlook your attitude. So just go and talk to them quickly. They're calling again. With a pushy attitude, Phil handed me the phone. Reluctantly, I answered the call, had a brief conversation with the other party, and ended the call. Phil asked me, "So, what did they say?" I calmly responded, "They were really angry. Apparently, your mother ignored a red light and crashed into the other car. And the other party is a famous international celebrity, demanding compensation for medical expenses and the totaled car. That car is worth $300,000. What? Phil and his mother exclaimed in shock, their voices echoing in the room. They seemed speechless, unable to hide their surprise at the information. "Well, can't you handle it with insurance?" I lightly suggested, but my mother-in-law's face darkened immediately. Actually, we don't have insurance. I thought it was a waste of money," she muttered. "Oh my," I said with a bitter smile, sensing the atmosphere change. Phil showed his anger toward me and said, "What's with that attitude? That's not how a wife should act. Quickly talk to them and make sure there are no additional costs. If it goes to court, you'll be our interpreter." Then, my mother-in-law chimed in, "Yes, you're rich, so you should help out with this. It's only natural as a wife." I calmly responded, "I'm not a wife anymore." "What?" Phil looked surprised, but I proceeded to explain the facts matter-of-factly. When Phil presented the divorce form to pressure me, my heart had already gone cold. I swiftly went to the courthouse and filed the divorce papers. I had kept the form Phil had used for leverage in case anything happened. "What, you? How could you do this on your own?" Phil exclaimed in shock. "How disrespectful." His mother accused. Both of them criticized me simultaneously, but I stood my ground and confidently rebutted, "I have nothing to do with you anymore. We're just strangers now. You can suffer paying the $300,000 or whatever. You horrible people." I walked away, leaving them fuming with anger. As for what happened afterward, I heard that both eventually made a full recovery from their injuries. Apparently, they weren't that seriously injured in the first place. My former mother-in-law's car was broken beyond repair due to the accident, and the famous foreign celebrity demanded an unimaginable amount in compensation. Phil's bar was never particularly successful, and his income alone was insufficient to support their household. With Phil's low income and his mother living unemployed in an apartment, they had no way to come up with the necessary funds and eventually had to go into debt. Phil moved back to his parents' home, and the two now live together in a shabby apartment, working hard to repay their debt. Even after hearing these stories, I don't feel any sympathy for them. On the contrary, I even feel a sense of relief. Several years have passed since the divorce, and I've been living alone, focusing on my work. As a result, my stress has decreased and my performance at work has improved, leading to a promotion. Recently, a sincere and reliable man I met through work formally asked to date me with marriage in mind. I intend to accept his proposal. From now on, I'll put myself first and pursue true happiness. That's it. You've been using the $500 I sent for living expenses for fun, haven't you? Jason shouted loudly as he returned home. Could he be lying even more, not satisfied with just exploiting me? As I heard his voice, anger also welled up in my heart. Jason was a problem. He surely had no intention of listening to me. My love for Jason, who ignored my words and said things as he pleased, cooled rapidly. Do you have any intention of listening to me? I don't want to hear your excuses. Either return the money you spent immediately, or divorce. What? Then it's divorce. I answered with a smile. Right after that, the front door opened. It seemed my son Kevin had come home. It's wrong to blame Mom. What? Are you defending this woman? She has. That's exactly why you both lost my trust. Seeing the person who appeared behind Kevin, we were surprised. Thanks to his support, I was able to divorce Jason. And by stopping the remittances, they will be put in a difficult situation. I, Tracy Manning, 37 years old, am a normal part-time office worker and a mother with a son, Kevin, who is in the midst of his rebellious phase. Kevin, ever since he was young, liked his studies and would voluntarily do his homework and prepare for lessons without my prompting. As he entered his rebellious phase, he gradually began to ignore me. However, he never used harsh words or violence. When he became a high school student, I felt this was normal. More difficult than my son were my husband Jason and my mother-in-law Diane. I met Jason in college, and we started dating due to his proactive approach. After graduating, Kevin was born and we got married. How rude to have a shotgun wedding, my mother-in-law criticized. She loved Jason very much and probably thought I took him away. I endured her mistreatment. Sometimes it even endangered my pregnancy. At such times, my father-in-law Michael would save us, saying, "What are you doing?" My father-in-law is strict but kind-hearted, a benefactor who has supported us many times. I keep in touch with my father-in-law, but I keep my distance from my mother-in-law. Honestly, I don't want to get involved with her. Then one day, I got an unpleasant call from my mother-in-law. "Hey, could you increase the remittance a bit?" Actually, we were financially supporting her. Once, Jason suggested we live together. However, citing unresolved issues from the past mistreatment and Kevin's examination period, I refused. Then, Jason and his mother strongly criticized me. Not wanting to live together is inappropriate for a wife. My mother-in-law said, always dwelling on the past. Jason also said, "Wait, does living together mean I have to change my desired school?" Kevin changed the situation with those words. Kevin, as the heir, was pampered by my mother-in-law. "If I don't go to that school, my future will be jeopardized. Do you intend to hinder my dreams? If so, I'll never forgive you." Because of Kevin's words, my mother-in-law had nothing to say. Jason also silently looked at his mother. It was also helpful that my father-in-law was on our side. "If you don't value your family, you might lose your job," he warned Jason. My father-in-law runs a company where I work part-time. Jason is the nominal successor, but his lack of work skills is well known. Even I, a part-timer, hear about Jason's incompetence. It's that famous. I think his current position is due to my father-in-law's mercy. Understanding this, Jason stopped mentioning living together. Given this background, we decided to provide financial support instead of living together. I don't feel the need to provide support, but please let me at least do this for my parents, begged Jason, so I accepted it. Jason is lazy, so in reality, I am the one sending the $500 he gave me directly to my mother-in-law. I think there's no need for financial support with your husband's income, but it's for my husband. Just send it quickly without complaints. My mother-in-law insisted over the phone. Arguing would only make my mother-in-law angrier. Until now, Kevin and my father-in-law have been supportive. But now Kevin is in adolescence, and my father-in-law is busy with an important project. It's hard to ask for help. Despite this, my mother-in-law's persistent demands for more money continued, so I decided to add another $300 from my part-time income. Just $300? Well, okay. I've increased the amount, so please don't make unnecessary contact anymore. I firmly warned my cheerful mother-in-law. Keeping distance from my mother-in-law was best, but I couldn't forget my father-in-law's kindness. I plan to endure until Kevin becomes independent. I'm back. Welcome back. After that, I plan to talk to Jason, who had just returned home, about the increased financial support. But Jason avoided even looking at me. Irritated by him, I still tried to have an important conversation. "I want to talk a little." "Enough, I'm tired. I'm going to take a bath," he said and headed straight to the bath. Picking up the socks and tie Jason left strewn about, I sighed. "What's wrong?" A voice came from behind, and I turned around in surprise to see Kevin, also looking surprised. That startled me. Kevin. It's been a while since he spoke to me, so I was surprised. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to startle you." "It's okay. Did something happen?" We talked for the first time in a long time. I was so happy, I ended up telling him everything. Being ignored by your own husband is indeed painful. Meanwhile, Kevin listened to my story, seemingly deep in thought. Maybe grandma. "Hey, I'm done with the bath. Time for dinner." While Kevin was about to say something, Jason returned to the living room. So, Kevin stopped speaking and went back to his room. Feeling like I missed a precious moment with my child, I served dinner to Jason. "Hey, I have something I want to talk about." Even while eating. "What, fish?" "Not meat." The moment I tried to start a conversation, Jason complained about the meal. "You said you wanted fish today, But more importantly, that was this morning, right? Now I feel like eating meat. A wife should sense these things. I don't have ESP. I go shopping after work, right? You should tell me before then. Shut up. You're a failure as a wife. Why did I have to be criticized like this? When I argued back, Jason became more dissatisfied, leading to a marital argument, and I couldn't bring up the topic of financial support. At that time, I didn't realize that Kevin was recording us with his smartphone. Sigh, father-in-law is really a good person. I muttered to myself alone in the living room. To be honest, I had to express it out loud to cope with the stress. My mother-in-law sighed. A younger Jason used to consider my health and help with housework. That's why I decided to marry him. But after Kevin was born, everything changed. While I struggled with Kevin's upbringing, he didn't support me at all, continuously criticizing. Mom would do it this way, mom would be perfect. Thoughts of divorce came and went in my mind. I pondered over the future alone after such events. Around the time Kevin started his summer vacation. During that period, Jason completely ignored me. It was the same behavior as Kevin during his rebellious phase. Is he really a mature adult? There's something important. Come to our parents' house. One day, our family was called to my in-laws' house. It was sudden, and I had work, and Kevin had other plans, so I sent Jason alone. Jason looked a bit displeased, but took a leave and went by himself. Kevin was also getting ready to leave. Kevin, where are you going? Friends. Yeah, that's right. Okay, take care. Don't be too late. So, Kevin and I left the house separately. While at work, I heard that Jason's absence increased work efficiency, and I unconsciously smiled. When I returned home, no one had come back yet, and I started preparing dinner, wondering if I would be criticized that day. Suddenly, "Hey, Tracy," Jason yelled as he entered through the front door. "What happened, Jason? You seem so upset. You've been deceiving me." With doubtful eyes, Jason shouted at me. "What?" Not understanding his words, I tilted my head and Jason glared at me with anger. Confused, I understood the situation from Jason's next words. "We're getting a divorce. You've been playing with the $500 I gave you for living expenses." As soon as he came home, Jason began his angry tirade. Listening to Jason, anger also welled up in my heart. Jason was out of line. Seeing his behavior, he clearly had no intention of listening to me. Jason's attitude of unilaterally throwing words without listening to me rapidly cooled my affection for him. "Don't you intend to listen to me? I don't want to hear your excuses. Either return the money you spent immediately or divorce." "What?" "Then divorce it is." I spoke with a gentle smile, and then the front door opened. It seemed Kevin had come home. "It's wrong to blame Mom." "What? You're defending this woman?" "She has to. That's exactly why you have lost our trust." We were surprised by the person who appeared behind Kevin. "Father, Dad, why are you here with Kevin?" There stood my father-in-law, filled with indignation. "What are you doing?" Explain quickly." When my father-in-law asked in a stern tone, Jason immediately stumbled over his words. My father-in-law gazed at him sternly while Kevin took out his smartphone. I recorded all of Dad's behavior towards Mom, including our recent conversation. This will show everyone that Dad is wrong. "What?" When Kevin said that, Jason looked utterly shocked. "I won't allow you to make Mom the villain, and if you try to hurt her, I'm prepared to take you down, Dad." Kevin is athletic and well-built, while Jason has recently started to develop a belly, a typical middle-aged man. The difference in strength was clear. "You're defying your father? What kind of father are you talking about? A father who follows grandmother's every word and ignores Mom's opinions? Even when I ignored her, Mom was always sincere towards me. But what are you doing as a father? Is making Mom suffer your job as a father?" Jason remained silent at Kevin's calm words. Children grow up before you know it. Despite this situation, I was sincerely happy that Kevin was protecting me. "Jason, remember what I said earlier about what happens to a man who doesn't value his family?" My father-in-law said this, and Jason's face turned pale. A natural reaction. It's as if he's saying he's about to fire him. Mom, here. This is a divorce form? What I was handed was a divorce form. Why did Kevin have this? I never expected such preparations. You don't have to worry about me. Encouraged by Kevin's words, I quickly filled in my part and handed it to Jason. Without hesitation, Jason signed the divorce form and then looked at me, surprised. What? Are you sure? Won't you be in trouble if we get divorced? I'll manage. It's easier than living with you. And no more troubles with your mother. But you have no choice but to sign the divorce form. Sign it now. Jason hesitated slightly, but under my father-in-law's stern gaze, he signed the divorce documents, looking dejected. Kevin, pack up. We're going to my parents' house. Got it. After that, we quickly packed our things and headed to my parents' house, sent off by my father-in-law. Jason, who tried to follow us, was glared at by Kevin and my father-in-law, stopping him in his tracks. We decided to stop by the city hall on the way to submit the divorce form. I'm truly glad Kevin and my father-in-law came back together. They made it possible for me to divorce Jason smoothly. What about the financial support? Of course, I'm stopping it. Stopping the financial support would definitely change their situation. Upon arriving at my parents' house, they welcomed us warmly, despite the sudden visit. After ensuring we were okay, my father-in-law went home. Hey Kevin, why were you with grandfather? Choosing a calm moment, I asked Kevin. Actually, I had a meeting planned with grandpa today. It turned out his plan for the day was to talk with my father-in-law. Kevin had told my father-in-law about the financial support and Jason's daily behavior after hearing about it from me. They had made plans to meet to discuss future strategies. It turned out that my father-in-law didn't know the details of the financial support. Come to think of it, my father-in-law was absent when the financial support was decided. The topic of financial support came up after my father-in-law had left the room. The subsequent arrangements were made over the phone with my mother-in-law. I would tell my husband, and my husband understands, she said, but maybe that was a mistake. And when Kevin told my father-in-law about the situation, he seemed to be trembling with anger. Diane should have sufficient funds from me. What is she spending the money on? As a result, my father-in-law apparently conducted an investigation into my mother-in-law's activities. What became clear was my mother-in-law's wasteful spending habits. She had been using the financial support we sent for extensive shopping. During my mother-in-law's absence, a search of the storage revealed countless branded items and luxury jewelry. Moreover, it seemed she had been giving lavish gifts to attractive young men in the neighborhood. The men showed no interest in my mother-in-law, and I wouldn't seriously date a man much older than me either. The rejected gifts were left unopened in the storage because she couldn't deal with them, and my father-in-law disposed of them. Grandpa is divorcing Grandma. He was furious about her irresponsibility. I can imagine. My father-in-law decided to divorce my mother-in-law, and after seeing Jason's actions on Kevin's phone, he was further enraged. He returned with Kevin to encourage me to divorce Jason too, after deciding to get divorced himself. They encountered the scene of me being criticized and immediately urged for the divorce papers to be signed after hearing me declare I wanted a divorce. That's why everything was so prepared. Exactly. This is from Grandpa. Kevin handed me a brochure about a property. The property was of moderate size, located midway between the school and my workplace. It seemed a bit far from my in-laws' house. What does this mean? I asked. Grandpa wants to offer us this house as an apology for the recent situation, Kevin explained. I was wide-eyed with surprise. While I would have to drive from my parents' house, I could commute using regular routes from this new house. Grandpa said he doesn't want us to hesitate. It seems he'd be happier if we accepted the house. I see. I need to thank him later. I was impressed by such generosity, typical of a CEO. I gratefully accepted the house offered by my father-in-law. Eventually, Jason lost his job, not only because of this incident but also because he exposed his incompetence by leveraging his position as the CEO's son and caused various problems. He was pushing off the little work he was assigned, coercing young female employees into relationships, and harassing male employees. During the discussion of these issues, testimonies piled up, resulting in Jason's immediate dismissal. My mother-in-law, divorced by my father-in-law and kicked out of the house, apparently ended up at Jason's place. After the settlement of asset division and child support, Jason's savings were almost depleted, and he was hit with the misfortune of losing his job. Recently, I saw Dad working at a classmate's part-time job being scolded. Really? Did that classmate say anything special? I asked. Yeah. He said, a man like your dad came in. I told him not to hesitate to be strict if he's not useful. Kevin replied. I see, that's how it is. Being continuously scolded by his son's classmate. What a pitiful situation. He was famous for his incompetence, and as he aged, his prospects for reemployment became even more difficult. On top of that, with my mother-in-law's unreformed spending habits, he is now struggling with debt. I heard from locals that fighting can be heard from their house daily, and recently the police were called due to the disturbance. That incident must have been a significant humiliation for him. Perhaps soon, he might have to leave that house, facing the possibility of being evicted due to mortgage delinquency. On one hand, I made progress in my career. My promotion to a full-time position meant more time and responsibility, but it also came with a corresponding increase in income. Life became a bit more comfortable compared to before, and I no longer had to worry about the monthly financial support. After hearing about Jason's situation, Kevin started showing interest in part-time work. Now, he buys what he wants with his own earnings, freeing us a bit from the strict budget we used to have. His growth and independence are a great relief to me. Unlike my mother-in-law, who had a habit of wasteful spending, we continue to live frugally, eliminating worries about the future. Our family is striving for a stable financial life. My relationship with my father-in-law remains good, and we see each other regularly. One day, my father-in-law made an unexpected proposal to Kevin. If you haven't decided on your future plans yet, how about considering taking over my business after graduation? I'd like you to play a key role in our company, he said. It seems my father-in-law has always considered Kevin as a successor to the company. Maybe employing Jason was part of this plan to spark Kevin's interest. There's no need to rush. If you don't find another dream by the time you graduate from college, I'd like you to consider our business as an option, my father-in-law said, and Kevin took his words seriously. Kevin, you can choose your own path. Don't worry about the favor. I'll solve it through my work, I told him. Thanks, Mom. Actually, I'm still undecided about my future, Kevin replied. He's aiming for a top university's economics department, but his future is still unclear. Then, one day, I received a call from Jason. He was struggling with the mortgage payments and ended up selling the house. I was just astonished by Jason, who left my mother-in-law behind. I understood that Jason was walking the path he chose, but I was still disappointed by his actions. You won't have any more trouble with my mom. Let's start over, Tracy. Kevin needs a real father, Jason said, to which I sharply reacted. What do you have left now? I asked, and he just looked puzzled. Through this exchange, I reconsidered my and my son's future. Our lives aren't dictated by someone else's choices. No matter what path Kevin chooses, I plan to support him fully. While my father-in-law's offer is appreciated, I want Kevin to choose his future on his own terms. I hope his university studies will bring new possibilities to his life and shape his dreams and aspirations. We will continue to move forward step by step, overcoming difficulties. Along with my son's growth, I may have also started a new journey. You have no job, no property, no home. Kevin and I have no feelings left for you. You even abandoned your mother, the only one you had left. What do you have now? Jason was silent to my question. I was honestly disappointed with him for choosing his mother over me and then ultimately abandoning her. The Jason I once loved seems to no longer exist. But if I return to you, Tracy, you no longer have a place with us. I don't want you to contact us ever again. I hung up the phone and set it to block his calls. Later, Jason went to my parents' house, but my father especially had harsh words for him, and my father-in-law took him away. He was then assigned to a construction site far away. Surrounded by burly men at work, it seems unlikely he'll interfere with us again. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, abandoned by Jason, lost her place and was rumored to be seen under a bridge. But that is no longer my concern. I'll be late coming home today because of my part-time job. Okay, thanks for letting me know. That's my line. Thank you, really. Since then, Kevin has emerged from his rebellious phase and engages in proper conversations with me. Through recent events, I've come to understand Kevin's feelings better. To respond to those feelings, I've been expressing my gratitude and apologies directly. Thanks to his response, our parent-child relationship has become closer. Jason's departure, ironically, made us closer as a family. I spent the day with Kevin, thankful for this, and smiling. My relationship with my father-in-law remains unchanged. I may want him as a successor, but I just want to see my dear daughter and grandson, he says, caring for us. My father-in-law was delighted when we recently went on a trip with my parents. I hope to maintain this good relationship with him. Years after the divorce, letters from Jason asking for reconciliation kept coming through my parents. I've been tearing them up without reading. Another letter from him? Looks like it. He still hasn't given up. He should realize that giving up is the real path to happiness. He probably wants to regain something since he has nothing left. Let's hurry and have dinner. Today, Kevin, who has just graduated from college, is going to his first day of work as a successor in the company. He earned the employees' trust during his internship while he was a student. The office staff even mentioned how he's seen as a promising new employee. I'm proud of my son. Actually, I wanted to give this to you, Mom. What is it? He handed me a beautiful box with an elegant pen inside. I bought this with the money I've been saving. I could work hard because of you. I was moved to tears in the morning. I want to continue living peacefully and closely as a family. And I want to be there for Kevin so he can always smile. I'll be careful not to be overbearing like someone we used to know.